Thanks, Sam. Hi everyone, this is Manali and I work in customer support for BMC Discovery. In this webinar, we are going to take a look on Discovery and ServiceNow CMDB integration. We will start with the overview of Discovery. Then we will take a look at Discovery and ServiceNow CMDB integration. Then we will look at customization and troubleshooting. And then we will review the entire summary once again. So let's start with the overview. Let's see what BMC Discovery does. BMC Discovery is an agentless data center discovery solution that automatically discovers data center assets like server, network devices, storage systems, and cloud. It also discovers configuration and relationship data and provides ways to model your business applications. The discovered CI data and relationship can be then synced to Helix CMDB, Remedy 4 CMDB, and ServiceNow CMDB. In this webinar session, we will see how to set up, customize, and troubleshoot the ServiceNow CMDB. In order to set up the connection, you need to complete two prerequisites: the prerequisites from the Discovery side and the prerequisites from the ServiceNow side. Now let's take a look at the demo of the prerequisites from the Discovery side. Let's log into the BMC Discovery appliance as a system user. Let's go to the administration. In model section, click on CMDB sync. Click on add CMDB connection. Here you can see in the connection type Remedy CMDB REST API, Legacy API, Remedy Force, and the option No Export. At the moment, the option for ServiceNow CMDB is not available here. In order to enable it, go back to Administration. In the Application section, click on Licensing and click on Enable. BMC Discovery Sync for ServiceNow CMDB is a separately licensed product. It's not enabled out of the box. Before you are starting to set up the connection, you need to purchase the license to enable ServiceNow CMDB. You don't have to upload any key anywhere for the license. After the license is purchased, just come to the administration and licensing page and click on Enable. Now you can see that the connection is enabled. Let's go back to administration. Click on CMDB Sync. And now click again for adding new CMDB connection. Here you can see now ServiceNow option is available for selection. And once you have enabled it, you can see all these connection details. The next part in the prerequisite is the TKU. Let's go to the Manage and Knowledge. Mapping of the classes and attributes from Discovery node to classes in ServiceNow CMDB is performed by TPL. In order to set up the connection, you need to download this TPL from BMC EPD site and upload it over here. Let's take a look at that. Use your valid support ID and log into BMC EPD site and click on Product Downloads. Click on Product Download tool. In Search for Product bar, search for Discovery. Select BMC Discovery Sync for ServiceNow CMDB. Select your Discovery version. Select the zip file for ServiceNow Sync and click on Download. Once the file is downloaded, you will see a zip file which looks like this. Once the file is downloaded, let's come back to Manage Knowledge page. Click on Upload. Upload the file. Once the file is uploaded, all the patterns would be automatically activated. And you can see over here the latest ServiceNow Sync, which we have just uploaded. These are all the prerequisites from the Discovery side. Now let's take a look at the prerequisites from ServiceNow side. Based on your Discovery version, you can see the prerequisites for setting up this connection in our official documentation. For example, for product version 22.2, this is the documentation page for preparing ServiceNow CMDB for synchronization. This page will tell you the ServiceNow CMDB sync supported releases and all the other prerequisites. What Discovery Administrator needs to do is share these list of prerequisites with your ServiceNow CMDB administrator. They will prepare all these prerequisites and share the results with you. But in this demo, we will take a look on what these prerequisites are and how they are set up. In order to do that, let's log into ServiceNow instance. First, we will configure the choice list. Log into ServiceNow CMDB with a System Administrator Privilege account. Go to the System Definition and Choice List. Click on New. Select the table as configuration item. Select the element as discovery source. Language has to be English. It's a mandatory requirement. Then we will enter label and value. Once you have selected all that, click on Submit. Now we will create BMC integration user. Go to the user administration and look for users. Click on New. Add the user ID. Select the language. Enter the password. Make sure that the account is active. Make sure that password needs reset and logout option are not selected. Select the option Web Service Access Only and then click on Submit. Once the record is created, we need to assign roles. So let's open that record again. Scroll down and in role selection, click on Edit. First, search for the role ITIL and then add in the roles list. Then look for Model Manager and add that. Then look for User Admin and add the User Admin. And finally look for Personalized Choices and add the role. The next step is setting up the OAuth API endpoint. You need to create application endpoint to allow BMC Discovery CMDB integration to access system resources in ServiceNow CMDB. In order to set that, look for Application Registry in System OAuth. Click on Application Registry and click on New. Select the option Create an OAuth API endpoint for external clients. Enter the name. This has to be unique. The client ID and the client secret would be created by default. So all you have to do is click on Submit. Save the client ID and client secret because you will need it at the time of creating the connection. Click on Submit. The next step is to set up class configuration summary. In BMC Discovery documentation, on the same page, you will see this class configuration summary. It contains the table that will show you the summary of configuration changes that you need to make to ServiceNow CMDB classes. For example, let's take a look at the class storage volume. In CI Class Manager, open Hierarchy and look for storage volume. Click on Identification rule. Here we need to make sure that the priority 100 is given for the attribute name and object ID and allow null attributes checkbox is selected. If the configuration is not set up like that, you have to change it. Click on Save and make sure that the changes are reflected over here. Just like that, you have to perform the rest of the configuration given in the class configuration summary table. Now we have completed all the prerequisites from the Discovery and ServiceNow side. Now let's take a look on setting up the connection and testing the connection. Let's switch to the demo and go to the Discovery appliance. Let's go to the Administration and CMDB sync. Click on Add CMDB connection. Select the option for ServiceNow. Enter the name of the connection. Enter the URL. Enter the user that we have created. Enter the password. Enter the client ID. Enter the client secret. Enter the proxy details if they are applicable to your connection. Here we will select the option for continuous sync We will keep the batch size and concurrent worker out of the box. We will select the source name which we have created in ServiceNow CMDB. Select the data model as ServiceNow and click on Test Connection. We can see that the connection test is successful. Click on Add. And now you can see that the connection is established successfully. Now let's take a look at few of the details of this connection. Here in this section, you can see the URL of your ServiceNow CMDB. This counter will tell you how many devices are inserted, updated, and deleted in this connection, the name of the source, and the data model. In the Actions tab, you have option to delete the connection, turn off the continuous sync, pause the connection temporarily, disable the connection completely, which you can later enable, and reset the counters. Resetting the counter will make all the device node updates, insertion and deletion back to 0. Let's take a look at the Details tab. This Details tab holds the connection details which you have entered at the time of connection creation. Then you have Filtering tab. Here in this section, you can choose and control what data needs to be sent from Discovery to CMDB. For example, from the BMC Discovery Node Kind to Filter drop-down, select Network Device, and then you can select No Network Device Nodes are synced to CMDB. If you select this filter, then no network device node will be sent from Discovery to CMDB. You can select between these three options. You can select that all the network device node would be sent into CMDB, no network device node would be sent to CMDB, and only the network devices which match following condition will be synced to CMDB. If you select this option, a query constructor will be opened over here. And if you search for serial ID, select the attribute and then say that serial ID is defined. It means that a filter is now applied to this connection where only network devices will be sent into CMDB where serial ID is defined. You can click on Save the condition and this filter condition would be saved. Here in the Action drop-down, you can export all these filtering conditions from one connection to another connection. There is also a tab for CMDB. Here from the drop-down menu of CMDB CI type to filter, you can select the CI. And in the filter setting, you have the same options. Now let's take a look at blackout windows. In this tab, you can configure blackout window. If you click on Add, you can define the time in which no update from this connection will be sent to your ServiceNow connection. You can select and choose the frequency, you can select the days, and you can select the start and the end time. Once this window is set, during this window absolutely no CI will be sent from Discovery to CMDB. The next is the Resync tab. Here you have options of Complete Resync, Prepare Only, and Incremental Resync. Basically, resync is the activity where once you start the complete resync, all the data from your Discovery appliance would be sent to ServiceNow CMDB. The next tab is the Status tab. Here you can see the connection details again. This is the export queue in which you can see how many devices are currently in the queue to be sent to ServiceNow CMDB. The connection detail will also show you the device inserted, updated, deleted, if there are any errors, and there are 2 reports that will show you the device that failed the last CMDB sync and the devices that succeeded last CMDB sync. Let's take a look at the small example. We will go to Explore and Data, click on Host. Here in the Actions, you have option for CMDB Sync Preview and Sync to CMDB. Let's take a look at CMDB Sync Preview. From the Preview CMDB Connection drop-down, select our connection. Here you can see the CIs and how they will be mapped in ServiceNow CMDB. Let's go back to the earlier page. Now we will click on Action and we will click on Sync to CMDB. Once the host is sent to CMDB, let's check the connection page. Let's open the connection. Here we can see that the host is sent to ServiceNow CMDB with the kind CMDB underscore CI underscore Linux underscore server. We can see the configuration items considered, inserted, updated and deleted, and same for the relationship and the overall connection status. Now I will hand over the session to Vaibhav. Thank you.
Thank you, Manali. Hello, everyone. My name is Vaibhav. I work with BMC Discovery Support Team. I'm specialized in discovery, Helix discovery, as well as integration between discovery and other products. In this session, I'm going to talk about customization and troubleshooting. We will start with customization, where I'm going to explain how to write custom sync mapping pattern for ServiceNow Sync. We are also going to talk about best practices for customization. After that, I'm going to walk you through a step-by-step process for troubleshooting sync-related problem, where we will see how to query local shadow copy and how to review CMDB sync log. Let's start with customization. For this webinar, I have created this simple custom sync mapping pattern, and in a minute, I'm going to explain the entire pattern and all the sync mapping block that I have used. But before that, let's quickly talk about the first best practice for customizing CMDB sync. If you have a requirement to sync a custom attribute to the CMDB or make any changes in the out-of-the-box synced values, it is recommended that you create your own custom patterns for that. Please do not update the out-of-the-box pattern, because if you do so, future official TQ upload may run into some conflict and the TQ patterns may not get activated. So the best practice is that if you have a requirement to sync something new or update out of the box value into the CMDB, write a dedicated custom pattern for that. Now let's go through this custom sync mapping pattern. Whenever you have a requirement to create a custom sync pattern, the best practice is that you always start by adding some comment. As you can see, I've added some comments here highlighting that this pattern is written by me and the purpose of the pattern. This pattern is going to sync host OS type value into a custom field in ServiceNow CMDB. When you add comments like this helps you and your team to quickly identify the purpose of the entire pattern module just by going through the added comments. You may be aware that in Discovery, we have a concept of pattern modules where we group all these similar patterns together. So whenever writing a sync pattern, the first thing that we need to define is the name of the pattern module. To do so, we will start with the keyword TPL, and then we will define the version of the TPL. Then we will use another keyword module, and finally, we will give out a name for our pattern module. After defining the pattern module, we will go ahead and define the metadata sync block. In the metadata block, we can define the origin of the pattern. In this case, this is a custom pattern. And then we can define the tree path. Tree path is important because here we can define the hierarchy in which the pattern will be stored in managed knowledge base in the UI. Once we upload this pattern, I'm going to show you how this tree path looks in the Discovery UI. After defining origin and tree path, we can end the metadata block. The next section is for importing out-of-the-box pattern. I'm going to explain in details why we need to import out-of-the-box patterns when we talk about mapping and the body section within the pattern. But for now, you can see that from out-of-the-box pattern module, I'm importing a pattern into this particular pattern module. After defining the metadata and importing all the required patterns, we can start by adding patterns within the pattern module. And to define a pattern within the pattern module, we have to use a keyword like sync mapping and then add a name for our pattern. After this, we should add a description about this pattern because the comments that we have added on the top here are applicable to the entire pattern module. But this description is specific to the pattern that you are defining here. Please note, description is mandatory, and if you don't define description like this, then the pattern upload will fail. Now within our pattern, the next sync mapping block is overview block. In the overview block, we can add tags. Tags helps us to search the pattern from the global search. So you can add some meaningful tags here. For example, here you can see I've added ServiceNow, host, and then my name. So in future, if I need to search for this pattern, I can go to the Discovery UI and search for these keywords. And this is gonna show this pattern into the search result. The next section in the overview is the data model. Now, if you are familiar with Helix CMDB, you know that we have data models like 0, 1, 2, 3. There are some integer values. But for ServiceNow, data model is always going to be ServiceNow. After defining the tags and data models, we can end the overview section. Now let's talk about the mapping block. Using the mapping block, we can define the starting point for our mapping. The starting point should always be the CI node that you're planning to update in CMDB using this custom pattern. For example, if you want to update the server CI, then the starting point will be host node. If you're planning to update software CI in CMDB, the starting point in our mapping will be software. In Discovery, we have two types of mapping available. The first one is the root mapping, and the second one is the extension mapping. To understand the difference between root mapping and extension mapping, let's open the out-of-the-box pattern that we have imported in this pattern module. Here is the pattern. Let's scroll down and see what kind of mapping is defined here. As you can see here, it's a direct mapping on the root node. If you're not familiar with what are the root nodes, in Discovery, root nodes are host, network devices, printer, SNMP managed devices, storage system, etc. So if you're planning to make changes in the root CI into this CMDB, you can use the root kind of mapping. If we talk about this specific mapping, you can see that we are mapping host with a capital H as a variable host with a small h. So basically in this mapping, we are taking the Discovery host node, we are defining that or importing that as a variable host with a small h. This is a root mapping because it is directly defined on the root node. In our pattern, though we are making changes on the host or server CI, which is a root node, the kind of mapping that we are using is an extension mapping. Because in my mapping, I'm not defining Discovery root nodes. I'm simply going to this pattern, out of the box pattern that we imported here, and taking the variable, the host variable. I'm referring to this variable, and then I'm defining that as a new variable for my pattern, and I'm giving it a name, my host node. This is called extension mapping. The extension mapping can be done for both root and non-root nodes, but the root mapping can only be done for root nodes. In the mapping section, we can also use Traversal to jump from one Discovery node to another. For example, let's say we have a requirement to also import softwares that are running on this host node. We can use Traversal to traverse from the host node to the software node. Looking at this mapping, you can now see the importance of importing the out-of-the-box pattern in our pattern module, because that helps us to define the extension mapping within our patterns. Another reason for importing out-of-the-box patterns in our pattern module is to pick the corresponding CI in our patterns. To understand what I mean by that, let's review the body section. In our mapping section, we have defined the Discovery node and we have picked up the host node in this example. Now we want to make changes in the corresponding CI into the CMDB. To do so, first we need to figure out the corresponding CI for this host node. And for that, I'm defining this line in my body section. To understand this line, let's go back to our out-of-the-box pattern and scroll down to the bottom to find the type of CI or name of CI that we are creating in CMDB. As you can see here, we are creating a CI named computer system in CMDB. Coming back to our pattern, if you see on the right side, I mentioned the pattern name, out of the box pattern name. Then I'm defining the CI type that is already defined in that pattern. and I'm assigning that CI value in a variable named my computer system CI. So in the mapping section, we picked up the discovery node. In the body section, we picked up the corresponding CI. So now it's time to define the custom attribute and assign a value on that from the discovery attribute. I'm doing that in this line. If you again look at the right side, you can see I'm taking my host node and then I'm picking the attribute OS underscore type. I'm assigning this value into my CI dot whatever the custom attribute field that we are going to create in CMDB. In a minute, we are going to log in into the ServiceNow CMDB and we are going to create a custom field, and then we will come back and add that field in this pattern. The another best practice for writing the custom pattern is to have logging details after each and every line in the body section. This helps you to quickly identify up to what part your pattern is working and from where it is failing. Once you have tested the pattern and everything is working fine, you can revisit the pattern and remove the unnecessary logging details. But in the initial phase, it's always helpful to add more and more logging so that you can easily identify where the pattern is failing. Now let's log into the ServiceNow CMDB UI and create a custom field that we will use in this pattern. I have logged into the ServiceNow Service Management portal. To create the custom attribute, we will go to System Definition and Dictionary. Let's start by searching dictionary entry here. We will click, and here we can find all the dictionary entries that are available in ServiceNow. To add or to create a custom attribute, we will click on New. The first thing that we need to specify here is the table name. The table name depends on the CI that you're going to modify using your custom pattern. In our case, we are planning to modify server CI. So to pick the exact table name, let's go to the discovery documentation for ServiceNow mapping for host. In this documentation, as you can see, that depending on the host operating system, CIs are synced into different ServiceNow tables. For example, Windows CIs are synced to CMDB CI Win Server. Similarly, we have different tables depending on the host operating system. Now here we have option to either create the dictionary entry for a specific subtable, or we can create the dictionary entry for the root table, which is CMDB CI server, and that attribute will be available to all the subtable of this root table. So if we create the attribute here, it will be automatically available for other subclasses. So I'm going to take this name and we will use this in the table section. Let's search and select for that table. In the type, I'm going to say string. In the column label, let's give it a name, ServiceNow demo. Depending upon the label, ServiceNow will automatically generate the column name. Please note, this is the name of the attribute that we need to specify in our custom pattern. So let's copy this one. Next, we need to specify the character length. I'm going to say 100. Depending on your requirement, you can select other settings from here, but for now we don't need those. So let's scroll down and click on Submit. ServiceNow is now going to create this attribute on the root class as well as all the subclasses. You can see that the attribute has been created in all the subclasses of the server CI. Now let's go back to our custom pattern and add the attribute name there. We will add the attribute here, and also we will add the attribute in any of the logging that we have added. So I'm going to replace CMDB field name here with the actual field name. After this, let's save the pattern. Now let's upload this pattern to Discovery, and we will sync one host to see if the host OS type value is getting synced to the ServiceNow underscore demo field that we just created in ServiceNow. To upload the pattern, let's log into the Discovery UI. Once logged in, click on Manage, Knowledge, and then click on upload to upload the created custom pattern. Click on choose file and go to the directory where the custom pattern is saved. Select the pattern, then click on open, and finally click on upload. It will take 1 or 2 minutes to upload the pattern. Let's wait. The pattern is now uploaded and active. Let's quickly see how it looks in the UI. Let's scroll down. As this is a custom pattern, let's click on custom modules. And here is our pattern. So you can see the hierarchy that we have mentioned in the tree path in the custom pattern. This is how it is displayed in the UI. So we have custom, ServiceNow, host, custom OS. Now, before we sync a host to test this pattern, let's enable debug for the CMDB sync log, because that will help us to troubleshoot if the pattern is not working. To enable the debug mode, let's click on the administration icon, then click on logs. And from here, we can set the CMDB synchronization log to debug and click on apply, and then click on OK. Now let's go to explore data, and we are going to pick one host and sync that one to ServiceNow CMDB and see if our pattern is working properly or not. For example, let's take this host. To sync it, let's click on action, CMDB sync, and then I'm going to sync this to my ServiceNow connection. Let's go to the overview page and see the status. From here, we can see that the host has been synced to the CMDB CI Win server table. Now we will log into the ServiceNow CI and we will see whether the ServiceNow_demo field has the OS type value synced properly or not. I have logged into the ServiceNow UI. From the Discovery CMDB status page, we saw that the host was synced to CMDB CI Win server table. So let's search for that table here. CMDB CI Win server. In ServiceNow, if you need to open any table, you can type the name of the table and then you can do .list. This will directly open that table with all the CI data. Now, before we search for our host here, let's change the view to include the custom attribute in the display. To change the view, click on this gear icon. And then from the available attributes, we will search for our attribute, which is ServiceNow_demo. Here it is. Let's select and add this one. Then click on OK. The view will be updated automatically. Now let's search for the host that we synced from Discovery. From the search bar here, we can see that the name is already selected. So let's add the name of the host and then hit enter. And here is our host. As you can see here, though we have added the attribute in the display, we don't see any value. Ideally, it should be Windows because the host that we synced is a Windows server and its OS type should be Windows. So it's clear our pattern did not work, or there was some other issue. Because of that, OS type value was not synced to this ServiceNow_demo attribute in ServiceNow. So let's see how can we troubleshoot this and identify the problem and then fix it. To start the troubleshooting, let's go to the Discovery UI. First, we are going to query local shadow copy to see what all details that Discovery has sent for this particular host. And then we will review CMDB sync log. If you're not familiar with local shadow copy, please watch my webinar, Discovery Query Reporting Best Practices Part 1 on YouTube, because I have explained shadow copy in details in that webinar. But just to give you an idea for now, for each of the CMDB connection that you create on the Discovery appliance, Discovery creates a shadow copy for that. In the shadow copy, Discovery maintains all the data that it has sent to the CMDB. This helps Discovery to compare the CI data locally with the shadow copy and only sync the changed value to the ServiceNow. So if you're discovering a CI on regular basis, Discovery will keep on comparing that CI data with the local shadow copy, and it will only sync to the ServiceNow if there is any change in the CI data. So if we query the shadow copy, we can find out all the details that Discovery has sent to the ServiceNow. For this particular case, let's say if Discovery has sent the ServiceNow underscore demo attribute to the ServiceNow, then we can confirm that the issue is not from the Discovery side. Something has gone wrong at the ServiceNow side. But if Discovery itself has not sent that attribute, then we can say that there is something wrong from the Discovery side. This is how you can use the shadow copy to confirm whether the problem is from the Discovery side or whether the problem is from the CMDB side. To query the shadow copy, let's go to the generic query section and let's run the query lookup partition to find the shadow copy name for our CMDB connection. From the available partitions, to find the local shadow copy, you will have to look for the partition which name start with underscore sync. Here for each of the connection that is available, as I said, we will have a dedicated shadow copy for it. For our ServiceNow connection, the name of the shadow copy is underscore sync underscore ServiceNow. So let's copy this. To create the query, to query the local shadow copy, you can refer to the knowledge article how to query the shadow copy. This knowledge article is specific for Helix CMDB, but the inline concept is same. I have already created a query, so I'm going to run it directly. So let's go back to the Discovery UI. Again, let's go to the generic search query section and add the query. Let me explain this query quickly. So we are searching in a partition which is underscore sync underscore ServiceNow. That is nothing but our local shadow copy. We know that the host was synced to this particular table. So I mentioned the name of the table. And then I'm adding a filter to only show me the detail for the host that we synced. And finally, I'm printing the summary of the sync details. So let's run this query. From the query output, if we scroll to the right, we don't see any attribute matching our custom attribute, that is ServiceNow underscore demo. This means detail was not sent from the discovery end. To troubleshoot this further, let's download the CMDB sync log. To download the log, click on the administration icon, then click on logs, go to log files, and let's search for the CMDB transformer log and download it. I have opened the downloaded log in Notepad++. Before I go ahead and explain how to review the log, let's quickly understand the stages of CMDB sync. There are total 5 stages and I have written them here. Let's go through them one by one and try to understand. When the sync is started for any root node, the first thing that Discovery does is to read all the related data, that is attribute, relationship for that node from the Discovery data store. Using that data, Discovery builds the source subgraph. In the second stage, source subgraph is converted into a target subgraph. The target subgraph is built considering the data model of the target CMDB. In the third stage, Discovery prepares the data for each table and classes of the CMDB. In the fourth stage, Discovery reads the local shadow copy to compare the data that it has created and the data that is already available in the local shadow copy. And finally, if there are any changes found in the CI data, that data will be synced to the CMDB. Now let's go to the CMDB transformer log and we will try to find all these 5 stages from the log entries. From the log, we can see that the sync of the host is starting here. And we can see that the first thing that Discovery is doing is building the source subgraph. Let's scroll down and see when this source subgraph is getting converted into target subgraph. Here, we can see that the source subgraph has been created and the nodes and relationship are mentioned. Now the next stage is to convert the source subgraph into a target subgraph using the sync mapping patterns. In this stage, you can see that Discovery is using all the sync mapping patterns to convert the data. Now let's go below and try to find the stage where Discovery is preparing the data for each table and classes. From here, we can see that for the table CMDB CI Win server, the data has been prepared. As we know that our custom sync mapping pattern is supposed to make changes in this particular server class. Let's see if our pattern value is mentioned here. From here, we can clearly see that our pattern worked, and for the attribute ServiceNow underscore demo, OS type value was assigned correctly. So we know when Discovery was preparing the data to send to the CMDB, our attribute was taken into consideration. Let's go down and try to see what went wrong with this attribute. Now in this section, we can see that when Discovery was finalizing the data for our table, it has printed this line for our attribute, remove unknown attribute, and then the name of our attribute. This means Discovery doesn't know about this attribute and it is considering that this is an unknown attribute. Because of this, this attribute has been removed from the final data that is prepared for our class. We can see that from here. This is the final data for this class, and if we look for our attribute, we can see it's not there anymore. I'm going to explain why Discovery thinks this is an unknown attribute. But for now, let's review the other parts of the log and try to see the remaining two stages, that is review shadow copy and sync the delta value to the CMDB. Let's keep going down. Here we can see the fourth stage, that is reading the shadow copy. In this stage, Discovery will compare the prepared data with the data in the shadow copy and try to find if there is any change in the CI data. Let's scroll down and see what else is happening. Here, as you can see, after comparing the data with the local shadow copy data, Discovery has found that there is no change in the CI, so it's not going to update anything in the ServiceNow CMDB. But if there was any change, the delta value will be synced to the ServiceNow CMDB. So this is how you review the CMDB sync log. Now let's talk about why Discovery is reporting that error unknown attribute. This is happening because though we have created the attribute in the ServiceNow CMDB, Discovery is not aware of that change. And based on the data model that Discovery has got from the ServiceNow CMDB earlier, it doesn't have that new attribute. To fix this, we simply need to restart the CMDB transformer service. So let's connect to the appliance command line and we will start the CMDB transformer service. And after that, we will sync the same host again and verify whether the attribute value is getting synced now or not. I have connected to the appliance command line, and to restart the CMDB sync transformer service, I'm running the command tw service control -- restart and then the name of the CMDB sync transformer service. Let's hit enter. And you will see that during the service restart, Discovery will read the ServiceNow data model. Here it is. The service restart is now completed and Discovery will now have the updated data model of the ServiceNow, including that new attribute that we have created. So let's go to the Discovery UI and sync the same host to the ServiceNow again. I have searched and opened that host. Let's click on Action, CMDB Sync, and sync to the ServiceNow connection. Now let's go to the ServiceNow and search for this host in CMDB CI Win Server table. I have opened the required table here in ServiceNow UI. Let's search for our host here. As you can see now, we have the OS type, which is Windows, set for our attribute that is ServiceNow underscore demo. So to conclude, if you create any new attribute in the ServiceNow, it is required to restart the CMDB sync transformer service. This concludes the demo on ServiceNow sync customization and troubleshooting. Let's summarize what we discussed in this session. We reviewed the prerequisite for Discovery ServiceNow CMDB integration. We saw how to customize CMDB sync by using custom sync mapping patterns. We discussed few of the best practices to follow when you are customizing CMDB sync. And we discussed a step-by-step process for troubleshooting sync-related issues. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time.